During China's Victory Day parade, the Chinese People's Liberation Army revealed to the entire world how they plan to smoke US forces. It's bold, very bold. Cutting-edge 4th-generation tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and they're crazier than you think. We saw vehicles wrapped with high-tech sensors, UAV integration, unmanned turrets, entire crews equipped with augmented reality. Essentially stuff unseen before, but don't worry, we'll break everything down. All I can say is that the Chinese military definitely implemented the lessons of the Ukraine war. Kim, stop telling me about Kursk. Just watch the damn parade. So in this video, we're diving straight into 4th-generation armored vehicles. More specifically, the ZTZ-100 tank and the ZBD-100, which is absolutely trash as an infantry fighting vehicle. We all know that the PLA lacks modern combat experience, but what they cooked there? Yes, they have all these impressive specs, but how well is it gonna perform on the battlefield? And I'm not talking on War Thunder! Anyway, we'll analyze the strengths and weaknesses of both vehicles, but we'll also analyze their doctrine and how they can actually be used in combat, if at all. Spoilers, remember this diagram. China is actually revolutionizing armored warfare. Welcome to HistoryLegends, and here are the latest news of the Asia-Pacific theater. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you to everyone that has already supported me on Patreon and PayPal, and welcome to the headquarters. So, first of all, what was the point of this parade? 80 years ago, on September 9th, 1945, the Imperial Japanese forces formally surrendered to the Chinese National Revolutionary Army, marking the end of an 8-year-long and costly war to repel the Japanese invaders. We often forget it, but over 3 million Chinese soldiers fell between 1937 and 1945. While the formal surrender of Imperial Japan on the USS Missouri was signed on September 2nd, the 3rd was designated by China as its official Victory Day. The practice of commemorating Victory Day with a military parade every 10 years was initiated under Chairman Xi Jinping's administration in 2015. For months, PLA soldiers spent countless hours perfecting their motion and synchronization, in anticipation for one of the proudest moments in their lives. It's not a surprise that the parade was as spectacular as it gets. In comparison, the US Army's Disneyland parade filled with cringy sponsored segments was simply no match.
Special thanks to our sponsor, Palantir.
Even Trump knows he got humbled.
It was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching.
What China did was the geopolitical equivalent of leaking an intimidating pic to the public. Let's start with China's new 4th-generation main battle tank. Before the parade, observers referred to it as the ZTZ-100, but now we know that it was officially designated only as Type 100. But since I don't want you to get confused with this bad boy, the Japanese Type 100, we'll at war. We'll call this 4th-gen tank the ZTZ-100. As a reminder, the ZTZ-100 is designated as 4th generation because the 1st generation was made up of post-World War II main battle tank designs, like Chinese derivatives of the Soviet T-54-55. The 2nd generation included the Type 80-88, as well as the ZTZ-96, which correspond to the Soviet T-62 and T-64. China's 3rd generation featured the ZTZ-99A heavy MBT and the ZTQ-15 light tank. At last, the newly revealed ZTZ-100 is part of the informatization and AI-driven 4th generation. If tests are conclusive, it could become the PLA's ground forces' sole MBT going forward. If. We first got a glimpse of this 4th generation MBT back in 2019, when Subsystems technological demonstrators appeared in a promotional video for the 60th anniversary of the establishment of the first Research Institute of China Ordnance. Years later, it was spotted traveling on public roads during the testing phase in 2024, and then again on the 2nd rehearsal day being transported on a train. The ZTZ-100 is estimated to weigh approximately 40 tons, 30% lighter than the almost 60 tons of the ZTZ-99A. Chinese engineers seem to have prioritized a lighter, faster, and more versatile tank, trading mass for advanced electronics and digital integration. So while the US military abandoned the M10 Booker after spending over $1 billion on this program, China decided to double down. But there's a reason for this. No spoilers, but the ZTZ-100, just like all good things in life, came in pairs. So here's a quick breakdown of the specs of the ZTZ-100. 40 tons hybrid diesel-electric engine, allegedly 1,500 horsepower diesel connected to batteries and 2 electric motors, which permits near-silent operations in combat. They'll drive right behind you and smoke your ass at point blank without you even knowing. As part of this next gen, the ZTZ-100 features an unmanned turret, which, by the way, enhances crew protection by relocating them to a separate and heavily armored hull capsule. Most analysts believe it has a two-man crew, because that's the number of crew that were visible during the parade, but some observations on the design of the tank could indicate a crew of 3 people, mostly due to the number of periscopes present in front of the crew hatches. I mean, I'm gonna state the obvious, but it makes sense for the commander and the gunner to be visible, while the driver inside actually is maneuvering the tank. And the Russian T-14 Armata, which is also a 4th generation tank, also has a crew of 3 people. In that case, driver, gunner, and commander. However, all eyes were set on the new tank's 105mm smoothbore gun. But we'll get back to this in a minute. Additionally, the ZTZ-100 is armed with a 12.7mm machine gun mounted on the remote weapon station at the top of the turret. It also features a complete active protection system providing full 360-degree coverage against incoming threats, such as drones and anti-tank missiles. So that was a summary of the main specs of this new 4th generation Chinese main battle tank. But it's actually much more modern than you think. So why is everybody talking about this tank's main gun? At first sight, it's almost entirely fitted with a thermal sleeve, designed to suppress infrared emissions and reduce the tank's overall thermal signature against enemy sensors. Analysts assess the tank's armament includes a 105mm high-velocity smoothbore gun with an autoloader, identical to the weapon mounted on the ZTQ-15 light tank. By comparison, the PLA's Type 96 and Type 99 are armed with a 125mm cannon. Hold on a second, why would you actively push to get a smaller caliber gun? Some analysts believe the ammunition used could contain electrothermochemical propellants to enhance muzzle velocity and thereby increase range. It could also feature programmable smart projectiles, which can be more effective in urban environments or against fortified enemy infantry positions. GG, well played, campers. But yeah, it makes sense, considering that the main battlefield where they're most likely going to be used in is in the very dense urban areas of Taiwan. And on top of that, the smaller than average 105mm main gun has modern stabilization systems, reportedly capable of firing APF-SDS rounds at up to 1,700 meters per second. The most important is that due to these advances in propellant and kinetic energy delivery, the firepower of the new ZTZ-100 is said to be comparable to the NATO standard 120mm and Russian 125mm tank guns. Once again, what's interesting is that the choice of a smaller caliber gun was made under the backdrop of all the other 4th generation tanks going for larger and larger calibers. For example, the expected final form of the Russian T-14 Armata is armed with a 152mm gun, as opposed to the current 125mm on all Russian MBTs. In response, European 4th generation tank concepts are also moving towards equal or larger calibers, like the KNDS Ascalon 120-140mm guns for the AMBT, while for the Leopard 2 ARC 3.0, the Rheinmetall KF-51 mounts a 130mm main gun, a significant increase in size from the legacy 120mm standard. There's a real girth inflation. However, China said stop. For the Chinese ground forces, as the age of drones has arrived, they believe heavy tanks with big guns have become somewhat obsolete, especially since tank-on-tank engagements are relatively rare on the Ukraine battlefield.
Best job I ever had. Best job I ever had.
However, what is not rare is using tanks for direct fire to blast enemy positions at point blank. Urban warfare. From what I see, this is what the ZTZ-100 was meant for. And look, worst case scenario, if necessary, China always has over 1,000 of the large ZTZ-99 main battle tanks in reserve. That's more than all the active tanks of the UK, Germany, France, and Italy. Yeah, ça m'est correct. So, the lesson of the Ukraine war is that instead of maxing out the main gun and the armor, the PLA preferred to max out active protection, with the ZTZ-100 being equipped with a dozen sensors. 5 for self-protection, 3 for fire control, 2 for the hatches, and another 2 for the armor. Together they provide the tank with some sort of protective bubble. I mean, it makes sense. How many tanks have we seen in the Ukraine war being immobilized before even reaching the front? In theory, the ZTZ-100 tank's defense system integrates 3 layers. The top layer combines threat detection with sensors like DAS for infrared signatures, laser and radar warning receivers, as well as soft kill measures, like JD-34 dazzlers to disrupt FPV drone and ATGM guidance, although effectiveness varies by target algorithm. The middle layer employs 5 AESA radar arrays, including one for top attack threats, guiding 12 soft-kill multispectral smoke launchers that block infrared, lasers, visible light, and radar, alongside the GL6 active protection system, with 8 launchers for hard kill against RPGs, although this may be insufficient against swarms of FPV drone strikes. At last, the base layer provides passive protection with composite or rolled armor, and potentially electromagnetic reactive armor, which was tested in 2017. Long story short, its purpose was to counter shaped charges by short-circuiting plates to create a magnetic counterforce. All this supplemented by side armor packages for enhancing hull and crew protection. And this despite high energy demands. Wow, oof, that was a mouthful. I know it's a lot of tech terminology to swallow, but trust me, after a couple runs, you'll get used to it. And to make these tanks even more lethal, they're expected to perform coordinated combat, deployed as a network of tanks using AI, and that can mutually support each other. With that being said, we don't know how all this high-tech equipment will actually perform on the battlefield. The problem is that electronic warfare or smoke obscurance can jam or even blind the tank sensors, whereas precision munitions or laser countermeasures can disable them physically. And who knows, there's also the threat of the tank being hacked, and if that happens, the unmanned turret will effectively be neutralized, and this brand new and impressive 4th generation tank might just end up a sitting duck. The PLA also learned another lesson from the Ukraine war. IFVs can defeat tanks. In the days leading up to the parade, observers also spotted a new type of infantry fighting vehicle roaming around Beijing late at night. Allegedly, the crew was looking for some crispy Peking duck, and I wouldn't blame them. You see, one key design philosophy behind Chinese armored vehicles is modularity, which is reflected in most wheeled and tracked platforms operating in the PLA ground forces. Modularity and cross-platform sharing of components enables higher levels of economy of scale and improves logistics efficiency. As such, the ZBD-100 is developed based on the ZTZ-100's hull, but with a different layout. As you can see, the ZTZ-100 and ZBD-100 are both referred to by the PLA as part of the 100 series. First of all, that would also mean a crew of 3, as usual, driver, gunner, and commander. The ZBD-100 also features an unmanned turret armed with a dual-purpose 30mm autocannon. However, the purpose of some containers and hatches at the back of the ZBD-100's hull has yet to be identified. One hypothesis is that some of them are modular missile systems for ATGMs, which cannot be found on the turret. This type of technology has been spotted on other types of vehicles developed by Chinese defense firms, such as the PLA CM501 truck-mounted ATGM. However, we need more confirmation, so let's keep an eye on the ZBD-100. Some analysts believe this armored vehicle will gradually replace China's oldest generation of IFVs, like the 2000 Type 86, essentially Chinese BMP-1s. But I completely disagree. This is not going to happen. First of all, we have to look at some details in terms of terminology used. The PLA actually refers to the ZBD-100 as a fire support vehicle or FSV, rather than a traditional IFV or infantry fighting vehicle. The ZBD-100 is actually complete trash if we compare it to an IFV, and you'll understand why in a minute. The ZBD-100 likely weighs around 40 tons, which is in the upper range of 30-ton IFVs being developed by Western firms like the M2 Bradley, the CV90, and the Puma. So the Chinese 4th gen ZBD-100 has approximately the same weight, approximately the same firepower. For sure it can transport as much infantry, right? Right? Oh no! You see, the smaller ramp and cluttered container hatches at the rear of the vehicle indicate that the rifleman carrying capacity is comparatively low. Hence the term FSV instead of IFV. From the back, the rear left is blocked. Only the right side allows riflemen to enter, and it's just super crammed. How many guys can even fit in there? I guess that's the same type of question you ask yourself when watching your average OF girl. Jokes aside, in this video we see one crew and 2 infantrymen at the back. But that can't be right. What's the point of an IV that can only transport 2 infantry? But hold on, there's more footage. Hitting it from the back, we can count 1, 2, and 3 infantrymen running in. And that's it. It's actually ridiculous. All this effort, all this tech, only to transport 3 riflemen.
Emotional damage.
So I had no other choice but to turn to Reddit. I know. But I did find these interesting posts. We learned that a PLA mechanized infantry squad is only composed of 6 dismounted riflemen. That means you would need 2 ZBDs to transport an entire rifle squad. And overall, that means you just double the number of vehicles you need to transport the same number of troops. So depending on how we see it, it could double the number of targets or divide the risk of losing infantry squads by 2. But personally, I don't really like this concept. For example, in combat, you would only need 1 casualty, KIA or wounded, to effectively pin down and paralyze these 3-man fire teams. It doesn't even make sense. I told you it was trash. Complete trash. At least as an IV. So what's the purpose of this ZBD-100? The PLA has been taking stacks of notes on the Ukraine war. They don't want this to happen to their armored units. But they also saw the crazy footage from Gaza, where Hamas fighters would run up to Israeli tanks and IVs and chuck anti-tank mines or IEDs right into them, while approaching unnoticed and leaving like Uber delivery guys in a rush. The PLA knows that the same thing could happen to their forces in the streets of Taipei. Check out this PLA diagram from 2023. Future MBT scheme proposal. We see a main battle tank in front, the ZTZ-100, and a support vehicle attached right behind it, the ZBD-100. Such a design resembles the Swedish UDA's XX-20 articulated tank. Then there was a conceptual 3D view of the design. The unmanned turret and all the firepower is located at the front, while delegating defense to the vehicle at the rear. We can clearly see the ground implementation of the loyal wingmen used by fighter aircraft. Now fast forward to 2025, check this out. The first line is composed of the ZTZ-100 tanks we just talked about, followed right behind by ZBD-100s. They're not physically attached to one another, but conceptually their role is the same. And this is where it gets very interesting. The ZBD-100 is trash as an infantry fighting vehicle, but that's simply not its purpose. The ZBD-100 is intended to directly support the ZTZ-100 tank, and that in multiple ways. Tactical reconnaissance, close and medium range fire support against light armor and infantry targets. Drone interception. For example, we saw how the ZTZ-100 could be in trouble against swarms of drones, as it has a limited 8 launchers for hard kills against drones. That's why the tank is meant to be supported by this ZBD. And that's not all. The ZBD-100 can also help with over-the-horizon anti-armor strikes, possibly using loitering munitions or ATGMs, which is likely contained in the mission module at the rear of the vehicle. Overall, this aids the ZTZ-100 by covering blind spots outside of its direct line of sight and filling in roles less suitable for the 105mm main gun. As I said, a loyal wingman. Just like Defense Politics Asia showing me around Singapore. But I'm not done. Now to add to this idea. So we saw how a major focus of China's 4th generation armored vehicle design is situational awareness and drone warfare. And it makes sense considering countless footage has also shown how drone surveillance has proven critical in winning armored engagements. But having these drone operators so far from the front could become problematic, communications could be cut. So why not place these drone operators right inside the armored vehicles? This would make the ZTZ-ZBD duo highly autonomous. That's why the ZBD-100 carries a surveillance quadcopter drone with optical sensors on board. The drone serves as an organic ISR asset. But the way we look at the size of this multi-rotor drone at the back of the vehicle is actually huge. Here you can see its relative size to a Chinese soldier. I just hope they're not supposed to stick out like that in combat. Actually, we can see 2 of them fit at the rear of the vehicle. And from what I've seen, I think you're supposed to fold them manually, which is not great at all. For sure, it could directly be controlled by the vehicle commander, but imagine in combat he has to command the vehicle and control the freaking drone at the same time. So that's why you have extra guys on board. To me, that's the only way to make sense of the design of this armored vehicle. These extra troops are actually weapon specialists, such as drone or ATGM operators, for example, instead of actual infantrymen. That's why, in my opinion, the new ZBD-100 is not a replacement for existing IVs, like the ZBD-04 or ZBL-08, simply because they can carry many more passengers. But to ensure that these IVs can safely disembark the personnel inside it, the entire sector has to be safe from enemy drones. And that's where the ZTZ and ZBD-100s intervene. During an attack, they would form the tip of the spear and secure the perimeter for the bulk of the forces to advance. And who knows, maybe they have additional UAV capabilities. Just like in the ZTQ-15, the drones could operate off the top of the turret. In this case, it's a fly-by-wire drone, and it's attached to the tank's electrical supply through a cable. The UAV then operates much like a kite being flown by the tank, possibly through fiber optics, so it can't be jammed. Chinese forces could also operate this cylindrical-shaped coaxial drone, which was shown at the 2024 Zhuhai Air Show. Conceptually, in this new form, the ZBD-100 makes sense and understand its purpose, but I still have so many questions. Why is the drone folded manually? Does that mean stationary takeoff and recovery? Which means the vehicle is going to be a big target. The launch pad also looks very small, and from what I've seen, there's no catching mechanism. Is it going to work as intended in combat? How far does it have to be from the ZTZ-100 to effectively protect it? But there's other aspects that makes these 4th generation armored vehicles truly futuristic. Apart from UAV integration, crew members on these platforms are equipped with augmented reality vision integrated helmets, which displays 360-degree visual feeds from DAS around the vehicle. The vehicle commander may also get additional head tracking functions on their helmets to control the remote weapon stations or unmanned turret. Just like in attack helicopters, these systems enhance the all-round situational awareness and reaction speed of crew members, overlaying sensor fusion information and battlefield map directly onto the crew's vision. We can also expect AI threat recognition capability to be present in the information processing unit and battle management system. In fact, back in 2022, a ZTQ-15 light tank that received unmanned capability conversion was displayed at the 2022 Zhuhai Air Show. There's also this paper on thermal dynamics of airflow of the 100 series vehicle's crew compartments. We can see how crew comfort is also a key consideration for maximizing combat effectiveness. Reminds me of these tea kettles in British tanks. I guess the only thing missing here is a PS5 and a dim sum station. The higher level of informatization and system integration is further shown by side-by-side configuration crew compartments with wide digital displays that span across the front of all crew members. The battle management system demands more complex digital interfaces due to the influx of information coming from all the additional sensors and from other systems within the wider network. In addition, crew members also received smartwatches, but as of now we don't know what their purpose is. Maybe it's to track calories from the dim sum station. All this to say that the 4th generation ZTZ-100 tank and ZBD-100 FSV form a new conceptualization of armored warfare, adapted to modern threats and designed to operate as a pair inside an integrated combat system. Sophisticated sensor integration and informatization allow the vehicles to identify possible threats before being detected. The multi-layered organic defensive layer gives the 100 series armored vehicles unparalleled protection against any potential threats on the modern battlefield, with a special focus on enemy drones. And I'm pretty sure that if one of the two vehicles is lost using the integrated C4 ISR architecture and AI, the remaining one can simply reintegrate into another pair. Or even better, the system can create a new duo as they pair up a lone ZTZ-100 with a lone ZBD-100, thus keeping operations rolling and optimizing firepower or defensive means based on mission needs. With that being said, there are also some challenges to consider. From all the information available, we can believe the Russian T-14 Armata and its unmanned turret proved unreliable, and this could explain its absence from the Ukraine battlefield. As for China's 4th gen tanks, what if all these high-tech sensors on the ZTZ-100 stop working as expected? What if the crew loses control of the turret? Is the ZBD-100 properly equipped to fully protect the ZTZ-100? There are so many questions left to be answered, and it all remains very theoretical. And like the saying goes, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description below.